You will hear today from 6 projects that you can see on the screen that have gathered participants to present some of their findings, to also present what the projects have been doing for some of them for over a year already, and they have still a few months to go. So you will probably have a second of this webinar in a year or so to hear the latest findings. Today, what we want to discuss is the multiple manifestations of housing inequalities and through different scopes, so living, working, and moving. And let me move the slides. Perfect. So as I mentioned, you will hear from 6 projects, yet we are a group of 7 EU-funded projects working together, meeting almost every month to discuss our approaches to the work that we are doing, how we can collaborate, what we are all releasing, and where we can support one another. If you are working on a project that is working on more or less the same topics and want to join us, I have put my email on the screen. What we discuss in general is, you can see on the right side of the screen, that unite our projects is the housing inequalities, inclusive, affordable, sustainable housing, labor insertion of migrant people in over marginalized communities, and the energy efficiency, energy poverty scopes as well of housing. In case you want to know, because I think the question often comes, yes, the event is recorded. We will make sure to upload it on YouTube after this event, and you will be able to watch it again and share it. I invite you to put your questions in the chat. We will see if we have time to tackle them, and otherwise, if you put for whom, to whom you are addressing them, I'm sure the speakers will happily answer them by email afterwards. And yes, I think that's it. Just a quick reminder to the agenda. So we will have 2 parts. This is the agenda of our first part, introducing very quickly the projects. And we will start right ahead with the housing project. So I didn't even introduce myself. I'm Marine Perriot. I'm leading the communication and dissemination of the housing project that Sabine, our dear coordinator, will introduce to you. And then you will hear from Supershine, ProLight, Rehousing, ProGen, and Prefigure. Sabine, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm very happy to be able to present the housing project to you that, as Marine mentioned, I'm together with my colleague Anne Kantel from Fraunhofer ISI in Germany are coordinating, and we've set a focus on affordable, sustainable and inclusive housing, and especially for marginalized communities. Marine, I cannot use the control, so could you click for me to the next slide, please? Perfect, thank you. So the project is running from February last year to January 2027 and is funded by the European Horizon Project program. And we, as I mentioned, set a focus on housing inequalities, but examine drivers, manifestations, but also impacts on different scales of housing inequality. And we put into the focus vulnerable groups. So we really try to develop policy solutions, but also other practical solutions to reach a socially just and really green housing transition to help to make Europe more inclusive. So at the heart of housing, we have diversity and social justice, and we also examine poverty interlinkages and the impact on housing to really have high quality policy recommendations. And as you can see, we address several SDGs in this project. So on the next slide, I just really briefly show 3 main activities. So we have secondary data analysis, but we also have primary data analysis because we have a multinational survey that runs across 8 countries to get insights and snapshots on the impact of different ongoing crises for housing inequality. We also have 4 in-depth case studies in the Czech Republic, Germany, Italy, and Romania. And here we have co-creation methods. So we have living labs, stakeholder engagement, but also capacity building activities. And finally, as a third main activity, We have policy recommendations that really aim to guide policymakers to have this, as the project name says, affordable, inclusive, and sustainable housing. So those are the three main activities that, of course, go hand in hand with each other. And of course, the project is not only me, but we have a consortium of 14 partners that are academic, but also think tanks and also NGOs. So quite a large consortium. And if you would like to know more about the project, please feel free to visit the housing website, but also follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date and have more contact with Marine. That's it from the housing consortium.
Thanks a lot, Sabine. And we will hear again from you in the second part.
Yes.
Super Shine. So I think it's Flaminia.
Yes, thank you, Marine. Okay, good morning, everybody. Super Shine is one of the lighthouse demonstrator projects for smart energy efficient district in social and affordable housing. But at its core, our main mission has always been to tackle material and immaterial socio and economic inequalities in housing and working and living conditions. Especially to reduce energy poverty and, in general, economic vulnerability of groups of people living in social and affordable housing. Next, please. Marine, please, can you go to next slide? Sorry. Okay.
Yes, I did, but it's
okay, don't work. Okay, so of course, to do so, we started from the assumption, the obvious assumption, that integrated energy efficient renovation on social and affordable housing complex are quite often expensive, long, and difficult to be financed. Therefore, what we are trying to do is to make this renovation financeable, affordable, and viable on the long run, bringing to the community long-lasting socioeconomic benefits like reduction of energy bills, but also reducing social exclusion, unequal access to decision-making, participation, because in general, apart from giving the communities a voice in shaping the renovation vision for their neighborhoods and district, we also tried to show that these renovations were based on practical and viable tools, so to guarantee the maintenance and coherence and consistency of the benefits they were going to gain. To do so, we focused as lighthouse demonstrator on 3 lighthouses in Trieste, Italy, Erning, Denmark, and Riga in Latvia. But then we also explored the replicability of our integrated approach in 4 fellow cities in Setúbal, Portugal, Belgrade, Serbia, Zaragoza, Spain, and Istanbul, Turkey. Next, please. So to go more in detail about our 3 lighthouses, we can see that in Trieste, we have the public social housing complex of the district of Boito, managed by Ater Trieste. This complex was so outdated and energy inefficient that the family living there for the past decades have experienced poor living condition, high bills, but also like scarce ventilation, molding, and so on, to such an extent that Ater decided to completely demolish the complex and rebuild it to make it more efficient with buildings at class A plus energy efficient, integrated energy management technologies, nature-based solutions, and also the community inputs. About Erning, the problems were a little different in the Fjällsbo affordable housing complex because when Supershine started, they were already renovating some of their buildings. Nevertheless, the problem was that they wanted to repurpose and retake communal spaces. So they tried to teach the communities new, affordable, and sustainable patterns, just to approach to be active part of the maintenance of the renovation through new green jobs, for example, in the recycling labs for demolished building materials, or in the management of the rewilding initiatives in the areas, or of the smart building technologies. In Riga, we have the affordable housing complex in Ageskalna Prides, and this complex was a large Soviet-era complex that was never renovated or refurbished since its construction. So the communities were suffering from poor comfort condition, but also energy inefficient, so very high bills and so on. So in the second part, we are going to see how Supershine try to approach to all these criticalities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Flaminia. Next is ProLight with Valentina.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Valentina Hira. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I work as a project manager at Klube, the cluster of bioeconomy and environment of Western Macedonia in Greece. It's a pleasure to be part of this webinar. Today, I will present the ProLight project, which focuses on developing progressive lighthouse districts as green gateways toward leadership in sustainability. So let's begin. The ProLight project aims to act as an urban incubator for technological, social, regulatory, and market solutions. We are working to identify methodologies that can foster European lighthouse and pocket districts. Through an empirical analysis of districts in Austria, Finland, Greece, Spain, Italy, and Portugal, we combine findings into so-called innovation clusters. The project provides blueprints for application and contributes to the creation of energy and climate-aware communities. Next slide, please. Okay, the project began on October 1st, 2022, with a duration of 48 months under the Horizon Europe program, focusing on social and affordable housing district demonstrators. The consortium brings together partners from across Europe, and we are working on 6 demo districts, each with its own context and challenges, but with a common goal to promote inclusive and sustainable living. Next slide, please. So across our 6 demonstration districts, we are testing and applying methodologies that can later be scaled up or replicated in other regions. These methodologies are not only technical, but also social and regulatory, ensuring that innovation is both inclusive and adaptable. In short, ProLight is about creating living laboratories that showcase how communities can evolve into sustainable, inclusive, and resilient districts. Thank you very much, and I look forward for the next presentation.
Thanks, Valentina. For Riausin, Eva.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Eva Gerőházy from Metropolitan Research Institute, representing the rehousing project. This project started 1.5 years ago, and we still have 1.5 years ahead, so we are in the middle. And practically the main aim of our project, it's not really a demonstration project or not a technical project, it's rather a research project, which is really aiming to understand that on the one hand, there are green policies, mainly EU-led green policies, but they are also implemented in local levels. So on the one side, there are, how to say, positive efforts to make something against climate change. On the other hand, no one knows, or very few knows, what might be the external effects, the negative external effects of green policies with regard to housing inequalities. And we would like really to explore that whether terms like green gentrification, renoviction, or even the damages in housing quality or housing affordability, whether they might be and under which circumstances they can be the consequences of green interventions and how these external impacts can be mitigated. And when we are speaking about green transition initiatives, there are 3 major interventions we are investigating. Densification, meaning building on rather brownfield areas and densify the urban texture rather than using new green areas for new complexes. The energy refurbishment of housing, and also implying nature-based solutions, so practically greening the environment. So these are the 3 major interventions, the effect of which we are investigating. The next slide, please. The next, okay, it's coming. So as you can see, we have altogether 11 partners, and we are working in 9 countries. And you can see that we are covering Europe. We have Central European, Eastern European, Northern European, Southern European countries involved in the project, which provides us really high leverage with regard to the whole research activities. And how we do that, the last slide says something about the methodology. So practically, we have a two-layered approach. We are working on national level, and we are working on local level, and we are making the research. With regard to the national level research, which we already more or less completed by now, we are investigating these 9 countries based on desk research, expert interviews, and also using comparable microdata from SILC and other national databases. These investigations are about the housing policies and the energy and environmental policies of these countries. But in addition to that, in each 9 countries, we have picked 3 cities, towns. One is a metropolitan area, one is a middle-sized city, and one is a smaller-sized rural town. And in each city, we picked specific projects. And with regard to these projects, we are making a kind of microscopical research based on local data and a whole range of interviews with those stakeholders that are affected by these green interventions. Altogether, I think in each country, about 40, 50 local interviews will be created. We are just in the process of finishing these interviews, and the comparative research results will come, just about to come, let's say. And Jennifer from Zurich will speak about it later on. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Eva. So Lara, I will stop sharing my screen and invite you to share yours for Paugen.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marine. Okay. Let me... Do you all see my screen? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much. My name is Lara Roth. I am here on behalf of ABD. We are an NGO organization based in Barcelona, and I'm coordinator of European programs. I'm also here with my colleague Nona from Ecosurveys. She will later on explain a little bit further one aspect of the project, and I will introduce you briefly the Paugen project. I will use the website. So Paugen stands for Power Generation, and it's a project funded under the AMIF call of 2023. It has a duration of 30 months. It started on April last year and will finish on September of next year. So we are actually at the middle of its implementation. And ABD is coordinating the consortium, and we count with 6 more partners from across Europe. Ecosurveys, which is here today also, but they are based in Barcelona. We have ProArbeit from Germany, Crescer from Lisbon, from Portugal, Chidis from Italy, and CPMR as a partner at European level. So our project, I think I'm not missing one. Yeah. The main goal of our project is to increase the employability in 2 sectors that we found very relevant for energy transition, which are the renewable energies and the energy efficiency or construction sector. And we aim to do it by setting up 5 pilots in 5 European cities. One pilot will be developed in Barcelona, another one in Naples, another one in Perugia, another one in the county of Offenbach, another one in Lisbon. So these pilots are mainly based on a training and job placement program, which has been co-designed in each territory with a local network of stakeholders, and which aims to train between 150 and 2,050 migrant people. So it's 30 to 50 in each territory, and support them through this employability pathway, and not only receiving training in these 2 sectors, but also job counseling, intermediation with companies, with the aim of getting internships. And at a later stage, we aim at achieving job placements for for them. I will skip directly to the activities. So as I was saying, the project has been now running for 1 year. We started mainly with a research on a compilation of best practices of labor insertion programs with a component of training addressed to migrant people in Europe. And this is what Nona will explain you later. The setup of 5 local clusters in each territory has been a key element. Also, the setup of an European cluster, which is what has led us to be here present today. So at the European level, we have IECP, Women Connectors, and MedCities in the cluster. And with the local clusters, the idea has been that they are accompanying of the process of co-designing this training program. In each local cluster, we count with migrant-led associations, companies, and also public administrations. As I was saying, the main activity of the project is the starting of the pilots. So for example, in Barcelona, we started recently this week, and in the other territories, they are starting on October and finishing on March. By pilot, I mean the training of the people, the job placement support, and the evaluation of this training pathway. And also another key element is the setup of labor insertion hubs in each territory. So we are now, partners are in the searching now for companies and involving companies that will commit to the program by offering these job internships, and we expect job placements. And also we have 2 relevant multi-stakeholder events. One was held in Barcelona later May, gathering all the local cluster networks and the European network. And another one is expected to be held in Lisbon in January, also gathering the employer networks from each territory. And transversally, there are an advocacy campaign and communication activities. And I would like to highlight that all the lessons learned will serve us for creating guidelines for local governments in replicating these kinds of labor insertion programs. This is a task led by CPMR. And also we will open a call for replicability for other European regions who want to do a similar, but shorter pilot. And that will be all. Thank you.
Gracias, Lara. I will take back control.
Okay.
Do you see my screen? If yes, Costanza, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maureen, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Costanza, and I work at Fondazione Icons. We are responsible for the communication, dissemination, and exploitation activities within the Prefigure project, which, as you can probably imagine, since it's the reason why we're all here, also deals with housing. But what it has at its very core is this concept of the housing energy nexus. Maureen, can you go to the next slide, please? So the housing energy nexus reflects on the interlinking between housing access and housing inequalities and energy poverty. So Prefigure reflects on how these 2 dimensions are intertwined and how people today are facing these 2 challenges together. And the way in which Prefigure tries to examine and address this nexus and these challenges is through what we call the prototypes of change. Next slide, please. So prototypes of change are innovative schemes that can be economical, political, and social, that should represent models that can be scaled up and replicated elsewhere across Europe. And they're very diverse. You will hear Harris from the University of Amsterdam tell you more about the situation of newcomers and refugees in Greece. But some of our prototypes of change can be represented by a digital platform for tenants in Barcelona, where present tenants can leave reviews to future tenants of the flats they live in. Or we have examples of a community in Amsterdam that is using the heating from the canal to heat up their buildings. So it is a whole variety of different case studies, 14 to be precise, from all across Europe, that represent innovative practices in these two areas of housing and energy. Next slide, please. So these are our 14 case studies. They're located all across the continent. So we go from Northern Europe with Estonia and Denmark to the very south in the Balkans and Greece, and the Mediterranean with Spain. Then we have cases in Central Europe, in Germany, in the Netherlands, and even in the UK. Next slide, please. And something else which is interesting about our project is that we have a mobile laboratory called Duro, which was developed and will be developed by the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, which is our project's coordinator. And this mobile laboratory will tour some of these locations and actually engage with the communities, talk to the people, and gather their perspectives on the housing crisis and the energy transition. So next slide, please. So if you want to follow our journey, please look at our website or follow our social media pages to learn more. And I believe now we leave the floor to the speakers and the actual presentation. Thank you.
Exactly. Thanks a lot to the speakers of this first part, and the second we'll get more into practicalities and examples from all these projects. I'm sorry, when you say next, I'm always clicking, but I live in the countryside in France and my internet is probably slower than you would expect, but I'm hearing and passing the slides. Sabine, you once again start with housing.
Yes, thank you. So now I have the chance to give you some insights into the results. And here we used mixed method results to show systemic discrimination and housing quality and case studies from Germany and Italy. So the idea on the next slide, thank you, was to answer the following question. Do discriminatory practices influence the quality of housing that people are able to access? And also what mechanisms drive the pathways of discrimination in the housing sector? So the two main constructs here are discrimination and housing quality, and discrimination, at least in our context, we defined it as characteristics, personal characteristics that usually lead to disadvantage and different treatment of individual groups or people. And here, for instance, we have discrimination based on race, religion, gender, age, disability, or income. Of course, this is nothing new in the housing market and in housing research, though there are already multiple studies that show that impact can have discrimination can have an impact on people's opportunity to access the rental market, for instance, or the effect of racial discrimination on residential mobility. But we really try to show this from the multinational survey that we have to see what the self-reported experienced discrimination in the housing sector has as an impact, and also show more insights from two qualitative case studies to identify those mechanisms that lead to discrimination in the housing sector. And as a second construct, we have the housing quality, that in the housing project we define as the minimum or meeting a minimum threshold that is necessary for physical, mental, and social well-being. So it really is about meeting basic human needs that are, of course, not isolated, but have also always in context and are influenced by local conditions, cultural expectations, and of course the different needs of an individual. And of course those basic human needs are also highly impacted by environmental and climate-related risks. So yeah, in this context we define housing quality or quality housing. To give you an overview of the different constructs that are related here. And thank you for going to the next slide. And as mentioned, we give you some insights into Germany and Italy. And here we present the results of the representative samples from the multinational survey. We asked here which problems they experienced. And we did this in here's just one example. So we have several indicators from the multinational survey to operationalize housing quality. And here we asked which problems they have in their dwelling. And what we see is that especially mold around the windows or in the bathroom is something that people reported. So it was 11% in Italy and 6% in Germany. And another thing that was also reported quite several times is the damp walls, floors, and foundations. And as you can see, there are also, of course, cultural or country-specific differences. So there's more, there are more dwelling problems in Italy than in Germany. On the next slides, you see the results regarding the discrimination effect that we asked in the multinational survey. So we asked people, when trying to rent or buy an apartment or house in your country, have you ever felt discriminated against for any of the following reasons? And as you can see, income is the reason that most people are discriminated against in the housing sector. So every fifth or every fourth respondents reported to experience discrimination based on income. And also age seems to play a role for housing-related discrimination, and in Germany also the family situation. So as mentioned, those are representative results. So in Germany, we had about 1,000 respondents, and in Italy also a little less, but also around 1,000. So those are the results, the quantitative results from the multinational survey. And now going further into the case studies. So as mentioned, we have the case studies in Germany and Italy. So the case study in Germany examines housing inequality in relation to energy poverty and energy efficiency, and is based in an urban district in southwest Germany, which is characterized by an aging population and a high percentage of people with a migrant background from Eastern Europe. And on the other hand, we have the Italian case study that explores housing inequality within the wider reception program for Ukrainian refugees in a region in northern Italy. And we did stakeholder interviews and focus groups last year and early this year to highlight how the household level characteristics predict housing quality and how they intersect with wider and systemic mechanism of exclusion. So we found that intersectionality is definitely an issue here. So household traits really overlap. So for instance, income is not independent from the family situation or also age and education and gender. And we also see, for instance, that is also that spatial exclusion is an issue in the case studies. So we found, for instance, that limited public transport infrastructure in rural areas is an issue, but also busy highways or the natural landscape is something that is important for the communities in the case studies, and that this has also an impact on social integration challenges, but also employment challenges. And this is not all. So what we see on the spatial exclusion is also something that we see on the economic exclusion. So there are legal barriers that restrict access to the labor market, but also political exclusion and also social exclusion. For instance, the lack of representation in politics, but also social exclusion based on racialized discourses. So we see that all those different scales and different areas intersect with each other, and that it's really a systemic issue of exclusion here. To back this up with the quantitative results, on the next slide, you see the results of a logistic regression that we performed. So we asked what kind of discrimination predicts the dwelling problems that people reported in the multinational survey. And you can see that income has an impact for Italy and Germany. So income is the main variable predicting dwelling problems. And in Germany, we also have this intersection with income, disability, and family status. So those three characteristics or kind of discrimination had an impact on the dwelling problems in Germany, and in Italy, it was only income. So this really works quite well with the results that we have from the case studies on the qualitative part. So as a conclusion, on the next slide, we really see that there are a significant proportion of households who experience household discrimination, especially in regard to income. But of course, those are not isolated, but are intersect with other variables. And those characteristics can be addressed through targeted policy measures. And we refer to these as modifiable risk factors, for instance, income-related disadvantages that can be changed or impacted by social benefits or direct housing allowances to support citizens and their income situation. However, there are also other characteristics that we call immutable structural vulnerability factors that, of course, we cannot change, for instance, age, gender, and the family situation. But there are also risks with these factors that can be reduced, for instance, by shifting the focus from individuals to more systemic structures, and then political intervention can help to reshape the norms and practices, but also infrastructures across scales to really have an impact on those disadvantages. So we ask for a dual and multi-level governance perspective to really address discrimination in the housing quality area, and that policies consider household level characteristics as well as those wider systemic dimensions to really have an impact and have those inclusive, sustainable, and affordable housing. And with that, I'm closing my presentation and are happy to receive feedback or questions via email here. But as I mentioned, also keep you posted with other results from the housing project on the website and also on our LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sabine. For Supershine, I think it's Flaminia again.
Yes. Thank you, Marine. Okay, so to start again, we can see that Supershine tried to provide an holistic approach to overcome all the previously mentioned criticalities. In particular, next slide, please. We used the new European Bauhaus compass, so the values and the working principle, to build a perspective that integrated the financial, of course, viability and affordability of technical renovation with an environmental, social, and cultural approach. Of course, just a very couple of few words for each value of the European Bauhaus. We had, of course, the NEP togetherness, because we are trying to tackle social and cultural exclusion and unequal access to decision making through an engagement pathway to co-create, co-design and co-decide the renovation in the Three Lighthouse, also to aim at a social acceptance that is raising in parallel with the engagement. Then, of course, we intend the NEP sustainability in both the environmental and the economic sense, because apart from an environmental and sustainable analysis and assessment made through LCA and social LCA, so in which we considered aspects like improved accessibility, health and comfort, inclusivity, affordability, new local employment opportunities for the communities. But in particular, our main flagship of research is the delivering of innovative financial scheme to overcome affordability issues for housing renovation, and of course the tackling of energy poverty, in particular in the crowdfunding campaign supporting the piloting of PPP contracts for energy efficient refurbishment in social housing, paired with tailored business model for each lighthouse and a one-stop shop that we will see in detail later. Then, of course, we started from the assumption that aesthetic prominence should not be a luxury. So we try to find solution that, yeah, of course, address the essential need of social housing, but also was considering not only in their practical efficiency, in improving quality of life of inhabitants, but also in their aesthetic significance and their continuity with historical cultural values. Like, for example, we have Riga, which city center is UNESCO heritage. So, of course, we wanted to create a continuity. Next slide, please. In this slide, we can see how Supershine is piloting the different types of PPP contracts. So we can see there that we have sharing saving contracts, guarantee saving contract, hybrid PPP, through crowdfunding, energy supply contract, direct credit line, and so on. But to do so, we not only piloted that targeted to different target groups with all the parties potentially involved, like social housing companies, ESCOs, tenants, private owners, financial institutions, and so on. But we try to rank them in order to understand for each lighthouse which contract could be the most remunerative, not only for the company providing the renovation investment, but also for the inhabitants. After this analysis, considering the risk-adjusted extra returns, shared saving PPP contract was considered the most remunerative in all the lighthouse, and we also can see that in practical terms, we found out that the savings could be between 60 and 70% in a rough estimation, with payback periods of going from 8 to 10 years. But also the fact that the residents in this way could effectively enjoy lower energy bills almost immediately. And the housing providers can recover from their investment through shared saving over time, but not so only long, because you can see there the payback period for each lighthouse and also the return of the investment. Then we can go to next slide. Here we can see the fact that we also try to look at the renovation process as a whole and try to make it more accessible for all the potential involved stakeholders in the value chain. So Supershine decided to create a kind of digital hub in its one-stop shop, designed to centralize the process and make it more easy and smooth. In particular, the users can find technical and financial advice. For example, you can log in and propose a renovation project, and this project can be quoted. Then they can find guidance for available grants and funding, and also support for the actual design and execution of renovation, because we also try to create a kind of matchmaking platform by putting together demand and supply side in the renovation process, so that the stakeholders can be put in contact with qualified service providers to simplify this usually complex and fragmented process. Next slide, please. About the engagement that we were mentioning before, we developed different engagement methodologies and roadmaps for each lighthouse. And what we can see is that we are reaching different levels on the steps of the scales of participatory involvement of communities. In Riga, we developed a co-creation process towards the integrated vision of the future renovation of the entire Agenskalna-Prides district, both at building, neighborhood, and entire district level. Currently, the plan was being validated and received input by the communities, not only technical experts, but also civil society. This plan is actually in approval phase with the municipality of Riga, so no plan is actually implemented, but in the upcoming years we will see an integrated renovation in the entire district. Then in Trieste, we had a co-design process for the new residential complex of social housing in Boito, the other complex. ATER actually, of course, prepared a technical construction plan, but this plan has been changed, validated, and integrated by community inputs through an actual co-design process, because the community tried to widen the perspective of the plan also to the surrounding spaces in order to tackle also a sense of isolation, because sometimes these kind of complex were built in such a way to create geographical barriers to a sense of community in the entire district and the surrounding areas. So they also planned a way to overcome mobility criticalities, trying to imagine a cycle path that connects the social housing complex to the city centers, and many others community-led renovation suggestions. And of course, the plan has already been approved and will be implemented after the demolition that we will start next year of the existing complex, of course. In Herning, in Denmark, we can find we were supported by the fact that Denmark has the so-called tenant democracy, in which the tenants, which are actual owners of their affordable housing buildings, can actually co-decide the renovation through their management boards. So we actually had a proper co-decision path with them into 4 areas of intervention, making the building smarter with energy management technologies and other smart building technologies, urban reforestation and rewilding initiatives, recycling of building materials through actual community-led lab, and the implementation of photovoltaic systems and other active energy systems. Of course, the interventions are currently being made because from the lab, for example, they already built an orangery. They are building from the scratch and the waste of the demolition of their own buildings. They are building a beehive, a greenhouse, and other area of intervention. Next slide, please. So we are going to conclude this presentation with just a couple of replicability points, because of course Supershine is taking all the lessons learned towards adaptable projects blueprints, because we wanted to support the fellow cities to be able to have guidelines in integrating business model, life cycle assessment, social life cycle assessment, co-creation frameworks, and so on. Of course, the solution must be context specific, because we cannot think of implementing the same process also from the regulation and the authoritative process without considering their different regulation framework of the countries. For example, in Trieste, they are trying to go towards an energy community. So in Denmark, but of course, energy community legislation vary from country to country. So it's not always applicable, but we try to transmit the overall integrated approach. Then, of course, each step in the renovation must be followed by an holistic impact assessment, not only environmental and economic, but also social, as we have seen. And of course, there is also the focus to tackle the indoor comfort poor conditions of many social and affordable housing. And of course, the fact that citizen co-design and co-creation can be made easier through the use of digital tools that can also overcome criticalities, for example, involving older population or disabled population, even though, of course, in the Riga Lighthouses, where we used the digital-based platform, this digital platform was paired with guidelines for elderly people, and there were community sessions for elderly people to learn how to use these engagement platforms in order to be part of the process despite their actual vulnerability because of age. So thank you all. You can find in the last slide our website, and we are free to receive a question in the later section, but also through email, or you can consult our website where you can find description for each lighthouse. You can find a proper cost-benefit analysis with the actual results for all the PPP contracts and so on. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Flaminia. So next we have the example of ProLight of Kozani, Greece. Francesco, yes. It's you? No.
It's Valentina.
It's Valentina.
Hello again. Now I will present the ProLight demonstration project in Kozani, which is a social housing renovation and its successful replication effort. This work is carried out in collaboration with the municipality of Kozani. Next slide, please. So, Kozani in Western Macedonia is a city with about 25,000 dwellings. Among them, roughly 500 dwellings have been provided by the state at a low cost and with interest-free loans to support low-income households. These dwellings represent both an opportunity and a challenge, how to renovate and upgrade them sustainably while addressing social inequalities. Next, please. The Kozani pilot project is part of a larger initiative aimed at sustainable urban development. But what does this mean in practice? It means creating smart energy efficient districts that drive innovation and affordability, ensuring these solutions are within reach for low-income families, focus on improving quality of life, providing comfortable, energy-efficient housing that meets modern standards, prioritize inclusivity, environmental responsibility, aligning with climate neutrality goals. For example, a significant part of our work is not just about upgrading buildings, but ensuring that vulnerable population feel the tangible benefits like reduced energy bills and better indoor living conditions. Next, please. So the stages of the selection process were the following. Klube and Municipality of Kozani conducted a survey and issued a call of interest, of expression of interest from citizens wishing to participate in the renovation process. The selection criteria included the social and economic status of the residents and the energy features of their residences. 22 citizens were interested, and the evaluation of the survey results gave us 5 potential social dwellings that met all the criteria. After visiting these dwellings to verify the collected information, the final selection was made. Next, please. So together with the municipality, Klube selected a representative apartment of 110 square meters located in a social housing area of Kozani. It belongs to a low-income family with 3 children. The building was poorly constructed and had never undergone any energy upgrades. This made it the perfect case study for testing innovative renovation solutions with high social impact. Next, please. The first steps focused on sponsorships and partnerships. We engaged with the construction material suppliers, contractors, and engineers to support the project. We also collaborated with the University of Western Macedonia, which installed sensors to monitor indoor conditions such as temperature, humidity, CO2 levels, and air velocity. These measurements will be repeated after the renovation to assess the improvements. Next, please. So, about the sponsorships, we had a huge reaction from sponsors, from local and national companies. We managed to secure sponsorships for thermal insulation, energy-efficient window frames, solar thermal system, photovoltaic system, air conditioning system, and all the construction works. And our big achievement was that we managed to get funding and sponsorships for 2 more residences, 3 in total. Next, please. Regarding the energy saving measures we are implementing already in the first apartment, there will be additional thermal insulation of external walls and thermal insulation of the roof, the installation of thermally better external windows and the solar thermal system from hot water, the installation of photovoltaic panels of the roof, of the air conditioning systems, a heat pump, and the installation of smart home devices and sensors for measuring quantities in terms of thermal comfort. You can see pictures from the already done works. Next slide, please. The second building that was selected is a 2-story house located in a social housing area in ZEP in Kozani, built in 2002. The building has a bad original construction, has never gone any energy upgrade works. It is occupied by a low-income married couple, and the sponsorships we managed there to get the renovation includes thermal insulation, energy-efficient frames, solar thermal system, air conditioning system, and a heat pump. Next slide, please. Going on the third building, it is a one-story house located in the same area in Kozani, built in 2003 with poor original construction. In this house is a low-income family with 2 underage children. They never carried out any energy-efficient upgrades, and the sponsorships here, it's the thermal insulation, the energy-efficient frame, solar thermal system, and an air conditioning system. Next slide, please. So regarding the total sponsorship cost, you can see the significance of the sponsorships for the implementation of the project. Demo 1 has 43,000 euros on materials and services, Demo 2, 30,000, and Demo 3, 20,000. Next slide, please. So the sponsorships proved crucial. Although convincing companies was challenging due to costs, outreach efforts, including emails, phone calls, and direct visits, helped us build trust. The result was a strong group of sponsors aligned with pro-light goals, willing to contribute to both the technical and social success of the project. Next, please. The process combined technical work and community engagement, of course. A public survey and a call of expression of interest were launched at the beginning, widely promoted through social media and local media channels. We also conducted house visits, which not only supported the technical assessment, but also created opportunities to engage residents and raise awareness of the project. Next, please. So while there were challenges, the project has taught us several valuable lessons, including building strategic partnerships with clear benefits for sponsors, using tailored communication to secure support, emphasizing community impact, such as reduced energy costs, maintaining trust and consistent communication with sponsors, and highlighting the social responsibility and recognition sponsors gained. Next, please. To conclude, through the ProLight project and the Greek demo in Kozani, we aim to inspire others and set clear goals for the future. Additionally, for us, ProLight project is very much aligned with our purpose to make a meaningful contribution toward achieving the objectives of Kozani 2030. As the municipality will have a guidebook for application purposes in the future, we aim to achieve a high renovation rate of the city's building stock. This work contributes directly to Kozani's climate neutrality goals under the EU mission, while testing new approaches in social innovation and financial engineering for future large-scale refurbishment. So in conclusion, the Kozani Demo District shows how a single renovation project can generate knowledge, partnerships, and momentum for broader transformation. It proves that housing renovation is not only about energy efficiency, but also about equity, inclusion, and social innovation. Thank you very much for your attention. I think I have a question in the chat.
I can't look at the chat at the same time as I'm sharing my screen, but we can keep them for at the end, except if you are ready, then are ready to answer. Wait. I think it was if the slides also will be shared, which is the case. Kozani demo question, how to scale up the renovation from 3 units to much more, especially if the support is a sponsorship. Yeah, how do you convince people, companies to engage in further ones? Or do you
It's
have
not-
another business model?
Do you want to answer in the end of the presentations?
No, you can go ahead, as I think we only had this question so far.
Okay. This scale up is these sponsorships. It wasn't an easy work to do, but with the help of the municipality, of the sponsors, and all of these construction companies, the citizens, it was a big thing to do this. From these 3 units to much more, I think we have to have the connection between citizens, construction companies, and the municipality has to be good to go to them and ask for sponsorships. I think with the help from all of them, we could have this scale-up renovations from other to other dwellings. I don't know. I think it's a big thing, these sponsorships, but it has a lot of work.
Okay, there are more questions, but maybe Valentina, if you agree, you can reply in the chat.
Okay, yes.
Yes, perfect. So you have also more time maybe to think. And next was Ria Hossein. So Jennifer, if you want to take the floor.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, good. Good morning to everybody. Yes, I'm Jennifer Deine from the ETH Zurich, and I'm representing here the rehousing team. And we already heard it's a project that actually covers 9 countries and includes 11 partners. I will not go through them again since the list is very long. Today, what I want to present you is a few issues that are emerging in our research project. I'm trying really to cover a bit all the countries, and we are focusing here on housing inequality consequences of green policies in different European contexts. Yes, next, please. Yes, first of all, what do we mean by housing inequalities in our project? In the rehousing project, we understand housing inequalities as a concept referring to the housing burden, meaning the sharing of housing costs of different households, patterns of housing segmentation, so the shares of different tenure types, differences in housing quality, so access to running water, mold, energy performance of building, and so on. And then also unequal levels of housing consumption. And here we mainly refer to floor space per capita, so problems related to overcrowding. Next, please. And yes, so what green policies we are actually looking at? Here again, we look, of course, at housing policies that have an impact on housing. So energy refurbishments, we heard a lot about energy refurbishments already, so no need to go into a definition, but of course, we look at basically all programs that have also been gaining public support in terms of refurbishing the housing stock. We look at densification, which we define as an urban redevelopment process leading to higher use density. This is at least the objective, to reach higher use density in order to reduce the consumption of land. However, what we see very often is that actually in practice, what we see is an increase in building density. So we seal up more land, but not necessarily by creating more housing, more space for people. And what we also look at is so-called nature-based solutions, which are defined as actions that are inspired by, supported by, or copied from nature, and aiming at climate change mitigation, adaptation, at combating biodiversity loss. So we look here at greening of roofs and walls, which is supported in many countries within the framework of different projects and programs. We look at community gardens, creating and modifying green public spaces, renaturalization, and riverbank renovation. So we look at how these different green policies affect housing inequalities. Yes, next, please. Yes, next, please. I don't know it. Yeah. Actually, what I intend to do here is at looking a bit at emerging issues, and since we are currently still in the process of collecting data, both qualitative data and quantitative data, we are holding policy labs, we are interviewing stakeholders in all different countries, but also in different cities. We are actually in each of the 9 countries looking at a large city, at the average size, as a middle-sized city, and as a more small city. So what I'm trying today is to bring a bit the issues that are emerging from each country. I have asked all of my colleagues to tell me maybe in a nutshell what is a bit emerging in their country. And since we have 3 topics, I will limit myself to energy refurbishments and to densification, because the time does not allow to go in all details. So also nature-based solution, there are some interesting issues popping up, at least in some countries. So my colleagues in Italy told me that incentive-based policies on housing retrofitting, for example, through tax deduction and subsidies, have indeed promoted renovation activity instruments, but they disproportionately benefited wealthier owner-occupied households with a low uptake by low-income groups and a limited impact on the public housing sector. And this is very much related to the way how the whole subsidy program or the tax deduction program has been designed. Originally, it was really focusing only on single-family houses, meaning, of course, disproportionate benefit of people who are able to own that type of property. Next, please. Also, our colleagues in France were mainly concerned about the impact of energy refurbishments on the social housing sector. And what they have found is that actually energy retrofit policies may compound ongoing patterns of restructuring the social housing sector. Austerity policies may push social housing providers to diversify their revenues to balance the costs, for example, by partially selling the stock, by developing non-social schemes, or by prioritizing renovation over new construction. So this is a problem that has emerged in France, where there is still quite a substantive stock of social housing, but also under constraints at the moment. Next, please. Yeah. In Norway, we see that actually retrofitting policies are actually picking up very slowly, also related to the fact, of course, that Norway does have high provision of energy, but also their retrofitting policies are very fragmented, they are underfunded, and they rely mainly on market incentives. They mainly benefit wealthy homeowners and well-resourced municipalities, while renters, rural communities, and vulnerable groups face typically exclusion. Next, please. And in Switzerland, my own country, here it has to be underlined that we are a country of tenants. Only about 60% of the people in Switzerland are tenants. And we see that the cost of energy refurbishments, which are taking place quite on a significant scale with public subsidies, can be passed to tenants, and they entail massive rent increases. So higher rents are often unaffordable to the original tenants, leading to displacement. And there is also evidence of deadweight effect, meaning that actually the subsidies are primarily benefiting landlords who could refurbish their properties even without financial support. And this is because refurbishments are mainly done in cities where the market allows to increase the rent. So actually the incentive to do energy refurbishments is, among others, not always and not only, but very much also related to this possibility of adapting the rents to the current market prices. Next, please. Similarly, also in Spain, we see that energy renovation policies backed by the European Union and by national funding have been implemented unevenly, so spatially and also with regard to the the different tenure systems, and they are often reinforcing pre-existing territorial and socioeconomic disparities. And in the absence of robust tenant protection and redistributive mechanisms, the risk of entrenching housing precarity and spatial injustice are pretty high. Next, please. We now look at densification, which is the other environmental energy policies we are focusing on. And here we see also that in Hungary, one of our partner countries, densification is largely developer-led and profit-oriented, with no inclusionary zoning or affordability requirements so far. So new housing in densified areas target the high end of the market, reinforcing exclusionary dynamics, and especially in cities with already pressured housing markets. Next, please. Then in Austria, a very similar situation, but here our partners highlighted that actual densification leads to increasing land and construction costs, something we have observed basically in all countries, and together with the growing activity of profit-driven builders. We see that providing and acquiring cheap land for social and limited profit housing has become a challenge, making central and well-connected developments less accessible to lower income groups. And we are talking here about a country that still has a significant stock of non-profit housing, but even their densification is actually pushing the non-profit housing providers to less accessible areas. Next, please. And in Norway, similarly also in Norway, we see that the consequences of urban densification are very much the same, that it's largely developer-led and profit-oriented with no inclusionary zoning and affordability requirements, and new housing in densified areas target the high end of the market. They reinforce exclusionary dynamics, especially in the cities with already pressured housing markets, so very similar as in other countries. Next, please. And back to Switzerland, here the situation is particularly severe because there is a high scarcity of land. And so what we see, and also because in Switzerland, actually densification is one of the only countries where it is legally mandatory. So after the revision of the Spatial Planning Act, all cities, all municipalities have to move towards an inwards development. And in the absence of building land, meaning brownfields or greenfields, densification in fast-growing cities, for example, like Zurich and Geneva, it entails the demolition of lower density but low-cost rental housing, and it leads to the displacement of lower-income households. Large cities are increasingly unaffordable for middle and lower-income households, and there is really a trend of enhancing spatial inequalities. Next, please. So what are the emerging issues that we see basically in all the 9 countries, as you might have heard? I mean, even if different partners look at the problem slightly from a different angle, but what we certainly see in all countries is that covered by the rehousing project is that green policies are being implemented in a context of accelerated recommodification of housing, and thus adding actually fuel to the fire. So that's a bit the overall context. We are moving in a context of rapid financialization and commodification of housing, and obviously environmental and energy policies are even accelerating or fueling this reality. EU and national funding schemes often reinforce pre-existing territorial and socioeconomic disparities. And retrofitting policies in all countries rely on market and fiscal incentives, and they primarily benefit wealthy homeowners and well-resourced municipalities, while renters, rural communities, and vulnerable groups face often exclusion. Densification, in particular in fast-growing cities, has triggered an increase of land and construction costs and is typically driven by profit-oriented builders, leading to gentrification and the displacement of lower-income households. As green policies are mainly driven by market forces, there are also strong differences in terms of trends and impacts between fast-growing, stagnating, and shrinking cities, with this process taking up, all the environment, energy refurbishments and densification and nature-based solutions tend to be taken up very fast in larger cities, while the other cities are stagnating. And what we see is that in most countries and cities, there is hardly any measure to counteract the negative impacts of environmental and energy policies, and that the mitigation strategy remained rather an exception. So also in our projects, we aim, of course, at making policy recommendations, and we are not yet there because we are still in the process of actually documenting these patterns of housing inequalities that are emerging from environmental and energy policies. So maybe when we meet the next time, we can already tell you a bit more in detail what are our findings, but also in which direction we think that the policy recommendations could go in the future. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very much open to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jennifer. Actually, there were 2 questions in the chat, but I think what you just answered is that we need to wait for your policy recommendations. Caitlin was asking regarding the issue that subsidies are mostly benefiting middle-class homeowners and not most vulnerable people. What lessons or approaches have you found to improve the accessibility of municipal subsidies? And if you are aware of any policy example that would protect against rent hikes after renovation, ACA renovations?
Well, should I answer now?
If you have the answer, yes.
What we have seen, for instance, subsidies for energy refurbishments are typically basically given on the criteria only by looking at the housing, at the energy efficiency of the housing. There are subsidies for a certain type of interventions. What we think that these subsidies could be targeted also by including socioeconomic criteria. So home ownership, looking at who are the tenants, by maybe targeting these instruments towards the social housing stock. And this is generally not done. So what we see is that socioeconomic criteria like the tenure system, ownership, the socioeconomic background of the homeowners is not considered. And I think that is the socioeconomic criteria. And there is the spatial aspect also, that subsidies could perhaps be targeted more towards more isolated and remote communities, because now what we see is that refurbishments are taken up where the market is anyhow flourishing, where refurbishments happen anyhow because the housing market is very dynamic, because refurbishments allow actually to enhance the value of properties that can be passed to tenants. So there is a scope for actually including in the criteria for accessing refurbishment subsidies spatial criteria and socioeconomic criteria.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I suggest, because I see the time, that we move to the next PowerGen presentation. Oops.
Hello, thank you.
Hi, Nona.
Thank you, Maureen.
Hi.
I'm Nona. Hi, everyone, from EcoSurveys, a nonprofit and energy consultancy, and I will explain you the good practices report that we did in PowerGen. If you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. The aim of this report was to identify and analyze initiatives in Europe that wanted to include migrant people, ideally women, into the green energy sector through training and job opportunities. We searched for initiatives that included our 3 core pillars, and these pillars were: 1, migration; 2, training and labor inclusion, because we know that training is key for the better employability. And we were also looking for initiatives that included integration strategies. And finally, the renewable energy sector, because it's a growing sector with demand for workers. We studied 15 initiatives, but at the end, 10 were picked Not all of them addressed the 3 pillars, but still they were chosen because they provided interesting input for overall Pausian objectives, and also because they balanced some pillars that were less represented. For instance, this is the case of Moms at Work. This is an initiative that our colleagues from Italy studied. And this practice is not focused on the rest sector at all, but it's fully focused on women, migrant women that at the same time are moms. So this was chosen to balance the migration pillar that maybe in other initiatives was less represented. At the same time, this is why we speak about good practices instead of best practices, because most of them still have room for improvement, but they are useful for us in terms of lessons learned. At the end, each of them was picked because of their success, replicability, and positive outcomes. Next slide, please. After all our study, we end up writing 10 key takeaways. These takeaways highlight the most positive aspects of the practices, and you can see a summary here. The first one is that diverse skill training is needed for a growing sector. To improve employability, training programs should include homologated certificates and also specific skills recognized in the sector. At the same time, partnerships with bed providers and public administration could help recognize foreign credentials. Number 2 is a European agreement for a real green jobs integration. We all know that the green energy sector is a growing sector everywhere, and so is the demand for workers. So a European agreement stating the requirements and certifications needed for the sector would help to hire non-EU workers. And at the same time, it would support labor market integration by providing consistent standards across all Europe. Number 3 is creating career pathways, not barriers. This means that instead of sending people back to training if they don't find a job, it will be nice to explore other career pathways. In this sense, partnerships with local businesses could help, and at the same time, it's a nice opportunity for migrants to try and explore other job sectors. 4, education as a path to residency. In those contexts where national regulations allow it, education as a path to residency would help with integration of migrants, both in the job market, but also socially, in their social atmosphere. Then we have legal regularization to combat labor exploitation. Sadly, undocumented migrants face a higher vulnerability when it comes to labor exploitation. So facilitating the access to work contracts could help with this, could help with regularization and avoiding labor exploitation. And as mentioned before, in this sense, education as a path to regularization could help. And if we go to the next slide, you will see the last 4. Thank you. 6, language training for social and professional integration. Language is one of the main barriers for integration. So if the trainings included language lessons on different levels, this would help with integration in the workplace and also socially. Then we have a cross-sector collaboration to support the most vulnerable. There is a need for coordinated efforts among social services, employment agencies, and local governments. These collaborations can provide structured labor pathways for the most vulnerable and help them in the job sector. Number 8 is about gender equality, promoting gender equality in the rest sector. It is known that the energy sector is a highly male-dominated sector. So we must to implement certain actions to foster gender equality and the integration of women. For instance, some strategies that should be applied are related with work-life balance, also to help women feel more comfortable in the workplace, because usually they don't feel that comfortable in the sector, and so on. And very much in line with this, we have number 9, that it's targeted support for migrant women inclusion. Migrant women face unique challenges that are added to the challenges that women already have. And certain conditions should be considered, like language, cultural differences, limited access to information, childcare responsibilities. So targeted support considering these conditions should be implemented. And finally, there is the last key takeaway, that it's about ensuring stable funding to tackle energy poverty. If we want to achieve a long-term impact, sustained funding is key, especially for the trainings that we want to implement and foster. Apart from European funding, that is great, partnerships with public administration, education providers, or private companies would help to achieve this long-term success in addressing energy poverty or other energy-related issues. And this is the summary for our report on good practices. I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Nona. Let me go back to the slide. So Harris, for prefigure, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello. Okay. Well, my name is Haris Tsavdaroglu. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in the University of Amsterdam, and I'm going to present you a case study from Prefigure project that, as Constanza said in the beginning, and thank you for this, it's about the housing energy nexus in several areas, places across Europe. My case study is about the refugee camps in Greece. Thus, I'm going somehow to present how the energy infrastructures, energy actually as a social relation affects the housing conditions in state-run refugee camps. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. So I would like to start sharing you a short vignette from my fieldwork. So it was the end of July last year, and I was visiting the refugee camp of Polykastro, about an hour from Thessaloniki, North Greece. The temperature was over 40 degrees. And arriving by car outside the camp, I wrote in my notebook, it's like a dystopia here. The camp has no vegetation, as it is usually very windy. It is, as you can see in the photo, surrounded by a 3-meter concrete wall. Next, please. And during the fieldwork, the camp manager shows me around the camp, and he says, before you came, we checked the air conditioners in the containers. We have an order from the Ministry of Migration and Asylum to set the air conditioners at a temperature of 27 degrees, so that there is no high energy consumption, because of the European Union asks that every year we must show like 7% energy savings. However, in several containers, housing units, women do not let male technicians enter due to their religion. So in this way, we do nothing. There should be penalties for those who do not follow the rules. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. No, the previous.
Is it
previous
correct?
slides, please. The previous slides, please. Yes. No, the next.
I have this
Don't know
one as
why.
next. The
Yeah.
manager is constantly
The
searching.
next one, yeah. This one. Thank you. So the following days, during our interviews with residents of the camp, Aisha from Iraq I asked her about the issue of air conditioning, and she said that the manager is constantly searching for ways to control us. Now that it's hot, he asks us to have the air conditioning at a high temperature, but it is unbearable. The container is not well insulated. But we are not sitting idle either. So we do not open the door to the technicians. We say that our husband or brother is missing from the container and other men are not allowed to enter. So when they do checks, we gather only women in my container, we drink our tea and have the air conditioning at the temperature we like. So what we can see from these narratives, next please. Next please, yeah. Next slides, please. Yeah. So in this research, we are trying to address the question of housing, energy, and actually the injustice, energy, housing injustice in state-run refugee camps in the weather area of Thessaloniki, and as you can see. Especially after the so-called refugee crisis, that is better to call it as reception crisis, in 2016. In North Greece, around Thessaloniki, there were created 13 camps, and still are in operation 7 of them. And next, please. And we examined the energy housing nexus in 4 of them, as you can see. All of them are some dozens of hectares, their size, and they accommodate from some hundreds to some thousands of refugees. Next, please. Next, yes, thank you. Although several scholars have studied the Greek state policies concerning the topographies of the camps, the spatial formations, the management policies, but also protests and contestations. However, the energy infrastructures and energy-related social relations have not so far attracted the attention of scholars. And at the same time, of course, there is an important discussion on energy vulnerability, poverty, injustice, about citizens, about households. But apart from some recent studies, next please, on ethnic minorities households in the UK, relevant research on energy conditions in refugee camps in Europe is lacking. So in our research, we propose the concepts of biopolitics and infrapolitics, energy or housing biopolitics and infrapolitics, to examine the conditions in refugee camps. Next, please. Yeah, so our research, of course, is based in desktop research, but also in housing energy ethnographic research. We conducted interviews with asylum seekers, managers, and technical staff of the camps, officials from the Ministry of Migration and Asylum, representatives from the UNHCR, architects, engineers, private contractors, builder contractors, but also we organized some workshops like energy cafes that we also asked the participants to somehow to organize something like drawings. Next, please. To tell their stories through drawing, sketch and drawings. Next, please. So next, please. Yes. So the discussion around the camps is usually around two main approaches. The older one examines the camp as a space of exclusion, exception, and biopolitics, and following the analysis of the Italian philosopher Agamben on the state of exception and the suspension of law. So the refugee camp is conceptualized as the emblematic space of biopolitics, where bare life is produced and controlled by the sovereign power. However, the entanglement of energy policies and power relations within the state and camps has not yet been examined. We introduced the concept of energy biopolitics to investigate how sovereign power governs and manages the bodies, the lives, the livelihoods actually of the camp's residents through the administration and control of energy supply and energy infrastructure. Next, please, slides. So, however, we have to acknowledge that there is also a newer approach on camp studies that tries to break away from the Agambian disciplinary perspective, recentering the analysis to a more agent-oriented approach. So this approach abandons the perception of the refugee as a powerless victim and highlights the practices of contestation and protest. So we aim to enrich this approach by emphasizing the lived experiences, the agency, and the mutual help that concern energy practices of refugees. So at this point, we suggest that the concept of infrapolitics could be an insightful vehicle to grasp the everyday and most of the time hidden energy practices of contestation. Of course, infrapolitics has as a point of departure of reference the famous work of anthropologist Scott, who examined the daily practices of oppressed people. So as energy infrapolitics, so concerned is the daily practices of contestation. Next, please. So to understand the notion of energy biopolitics, we conducted, as I said, a lot of discussions and interviews that highlight the energy as a relation of power or power relation in refugee camps. Actually, people all the time they are saying that we are lost all of our energy in the camp because of the very bad quality of the food. It's very hot, the air conditions are not working, we cannot sleep very well, and of course the stress of applying for asylum. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah, thank you. So, and here it's very important to emphasize that there are no specific guidelines in the legislation of Greece, but also in the European directives regarding the energy conditions in state-run camps. And the existing legislation ignore actually the issue of energy. So there is no comprehensive plan for energy provision for state-run refugee camps, and the construction of the camps do not take into account guidelines that some organizations like the UNHCR, as well as other general, let's say, national or European legislation on climate change and renewable energy sources provide. Next, please. So the camp, and next, please. Next slides. So the camp is usually a former military area, a flat area without vegetation, paved with gravel and cement, making the terrain totally unsuitable for planting. And for instance, according to a contractor, a representative of a contractor company, he said that the direction to the builders was to make the entire camp a single thing with A3 gravel and to throw the containers on. If we want to make an energy upgrade, we must dig it up again. The ministry logic was we want something immediate yesterday, actually. If we want to move to a more energy sustainable camp, we must tear it all down and build it from scratch with a totally different philosophy. Next, please. residents of the camp usually are living in 27 square meters ISO boxes, containers that house between 6 and 8 people each. And also the containers are quite old. According to their specifications, they have a lifespan of up to 5 years, which they have already existed as they were installed in years 2016, 2017. Next, please. For instance, according to, in the words of, next, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the Eurotrade company, that is the most famous company that delivers containers for accommodation centers across Europe, they are saying that the quality of containers in Greece is the worst, and because the competitions are based on discounts, so its interest company beats the cost to get the project, so we don't have to give any technical studies, we don't have to give the best container, they will buy the cheapest. Therefore, these containers are for throwing away. These containers consume a lot of energy. The ministry says, I want to save money. I'll buy something cheap, but it will cost much more later. As you can imagine, the energy cost to maintain and to heat, or to cool a container, it's very high without so bad quality, without insulation. So the containers get extremely hot in the summer, freezing in the winter. They have very thin polyurethane foam insulation. They became also nests for cockroaches, ants, and other insects. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah, thank you. Okay, next. To save some time. Okay, thank you. So okay, we said, so on the one hand, it's very clear for us that the energy injustice, if you like, in refugee camps is expressed through the energy biopolitics that aim to devitalize people. And actually, the very interesting finding is that energy biopolitics are going a step forward as the Greek state migration policies uses actually the European Union environmental directives, for instance, the rhetoric for energy saving, as an excuse to further exercise punitive policies to the refugees. But on the other hand, of course, you can see contestations, people that the refugees, they have agency, they have housing energy actually agency. For instance, Abdul from Afghanistan says that a newcomer, I live in an almost destroyed container. The old comers, the older refugees, told me that it is a custom for refugees when they know that they are going to leave the camp to destroy the container. It is as if they are celebrating their liberation and want to make this statement. Next, please. Of course, as we said in the beginning, the anthropologist Scott, in his conceptualization of infrapolitics, he emphasizes that infrapolitics include social boycotting and small acts of sabotage. And actually, this is what is happening inside the camps. We have several examples here. For instance, you can see the food, for instance, that is the main biological source of energy. It's a typical case of conflict between biopolitics and infrapolitics, as pre-cooked meals are distributed by catering companies and is usually of very poor quality. They do not respond culturally to the dietary habits of the refugees. So refugees take the food, they keep only the fruits, and the rest they throw it into the trash cans in front of the manager's buildings to make this statement, like this kind of hidden kinds of protest, of resistance. And we can see several kinds of invisible, actually, sabotage against the imposed isolation. Next, please. And to conclude, next slides, please. So next one, please. Next. So to conclude, the question of let's say housing energy nexus in refugee camps, we are trying to address this question. So we theorize energy as a political technology and a mean of oppression, but also as an infra-political way of contestation. So we argue that energy injustice, as it is expressed by the poor energy conditions, the bad design, the mismanagement, the lack of maintenance of energy infrastructures, is not a failure, but a side effect, but a constitutive component and the very essence of the state by political governmentality of migration. Next, please. Next, please. Next slides, please.
It's just slow, Aris. I did it when you said it.
Yeah.
It's the last I have.
Yeah, it's the last one. Thank you. So despite the above, let's say, by political housing energy policies, people are constantly struggling to create and to invent cracks in the wall. So these inventions can be creative or destructive, silent or less vocal. Beyond the mainstreaming refugees victimhood, people living in camps always have agency. In our case, housing energy agency. Thus, we argue that the biopolitical energy experience of refugees is accompanied by infra-political actions. To conclude, infra-politics is the weapon of the weak. Thank you very much.